recording. So if you'll come to a seated position and have your usual stuff nearby, I do plan to do an inversion. And you know, Lori, for you especially, because this is your second class, from a yoga teacher standpoint, there's just no way on Zoom to monitor people's physical safety. And that's a big part of what a yoga teacher does in a physical class or in an in-person class. Yet at the same time, I don't want to shortchange, you know, what is possible. So if I come into a modified shoulder stand, using a chair for example, it is because I know that if you on your end or a student on the other end of a Zoom meeting is doing what I'm doing, then I know they'll be relatively safe. There's not going to be a lot of things that can go wrong. If you know your body, and I know that some of you do, if you know your body well, your body is pliant and your body is strong, and you want to take that shoulder stand into a complete version of the pose, please do, but make sure that you are safe. By safe, I mean make sure that you have blankets like I have over here on my left here. I think it may look to your right, but anyway, the blankets I have over here, I have folded and set up ready to go, so that when we get to that inversion, I won't have to mess around with them too much. If you come into that shoulder stand and you know that your body is safe going into halasana, plow pose, again, I don't want to discourage you from doing that, only to say that there's no way that I can check to make sure that your neck is safe, or to ask you, do you have osteoporosis? Because if you do, you sure as heck should not be doing plow pose. You might want to really question whether you want to do a complete shoulder stand. So again, don't hesitate to modify in directions that are okay for you. But also, I don't want to ever lead you in the direction of thinking that just because I'm doing something, you should be doing it as well. I will say that I am feeling a desire, my body just is saying, let's do something that's fairly physical. At the same time, I want to hold true to Ananda Yoga, and here's the reason why. Ananda Yoga has a basic tenet, which is that between the yoga postures, if we want to be conscious and aware of the energy of each pose, we will take a moment to pause. And the poses that we pause in are as important as the poses that we just left or the next pose we'll go to. And so on our mat, we can model many types of days. I have learned over my lifetime that I do not handle having a lot of extra time unless I have it scheduled out. I tend to get lethargic. I tend not to do things. I tend to watch too much TV. And so you can model that kind of day on your mat to keep your level of energy high by going slowly, by pausing longer in certain yoga postures, by using the affirmations more deeply. But you can also model the kinds of days where you have way too much on your plate that needs to be done, but you're going to do it, and you want to do it your best. And so finding neutral poses on your mat in those circumstances requires a different approach. Sometimes it requires being willing to be in a neutral pose that may not be a completely neutral pose. Here I am seated cross-legged. This is a neutral pose. I could meditate from this position. Not all neutral poses are going to be lend themselves to meditation. Plank pose, for example, which is oftentimes called Chaturanga Dandasana. four-legged staff pose. And so that is not a pose you would be likely to meditate in, but it is indeed a neutral pose. Vajrasana, it's a mudra, it's a kneeling pose. You're sitting on your heels, your toes are crossed over, your palms are crossed. A neutral pose, one that you could meditate in. But then coming into downward facing dog, not traditionally a neutral pose, but one that I, in my practice, use as a neutral pose. So as we go throughout our practice today, just be aware of the fact that we can mirror or mimic or model a version of a day on earth, a day in our life, in the time that we spend on our yoga mat. Always coming back to neutral, pausing to turn our attention inward. You know, on the yoga mat, there are certain of the yamas and niyamas that become very, very powerful to practice on our mat. And one of those is tapasya. Tapasya meaning that we take those things that are challenging, whether they are presented to us externally, or whether in meditation we are challenged to meditate. We use tapasya, patience, endurance, under difficult circumstances that become positive input that later will serve us in powerful ways. Beth, who is here today, was in British Columbia, and there was a particular event that my brother and sister and I had at Hell's Gate in British Columbia. Hell's Gate is, I think it's the Fraser River that runs through this deep, deep canyon. And my parents had paused a trip. We stopped there, and all three of us were within a year or two of each other. We were all teenagers. And we stopped and we decided we could climb down to the river instead of taking the path. And it was one major mistake. And we got stuck. We could neither go up nor down. We were finally rescued by French-Canadian railroad workers who lowered ropes down to us. Our parents never knew what we went through, but for the rest of our lives, that time, that event that was so challenging has been a point of conversation, and it was a bonding experience because we went through that challenge together. So we model these kinds of events on our mat by doing things that are a little bit challenging. That's the practice of tapasya. But we always do it with also that quality, that practice of ahimsa, non-harming. So let's go ahead and with our practice today, one of the secrets to tapasya, this practice of patient endurance under difficult circumstances, is to be contented even in those moments. Contentment itself is one of the niyamas. It is contentment is, in Sanskrit terms, santosh, or santosha, santosh. And Swami Kriyananda writes, contentment has been said to be the supreme virtue. Contentment means living to the fullest the good of every passing moment. Above all, it means living behind the present moment in the eternal now. So can we do that in our Hatha Yoga practice in the midst of a challenging yoga posture? Challenging because our bodies are tight, challenging because our bodies are not as strong as we would like, challenging because of the fact that we are in a pose that is not the easiest pose for us. How much is lost in life by people who perennially wish things other than they are, who complain unnecessarily and tell themselves that the world owes them more than it's giving them. We must smile inwardly with God, knowing that life is His dream. Contentment is the surest way of drawing the very best out of every circumstance. So as we practice today, I encourage you to practice with contentment, patient endurance, and to know that whenever there is a challenge, you have a choice. If the challenge is beyond what you should attempt, modify and make it more easy. If the challenge is not there yet, if you haven't met a challenge, hold the pose longer. Keep your breath flowing. Can you practice being in the eternal now, being behind the present moment, contented even with the challenge that you face? One of the things we battle with in yoga continuously in our lives, in our meditation, on our mats, is the attachment to things being either how they are or an attachment to wishing things to be different than they are. Yogananda writes about discrimination. Attachment is binding. It lends an imaginary halo of attractiveness to the object of desire. This is actually the quote of Swami Sri Yukteswar. And Yukteswar is the Yogananda's Param Guru, or Yogananda's Guru, our Param Guru, our great Guru. And so with that in mind, let's go ahead and practice a little bit of Tapasya with Surya Beta Pranayama. Right? We're in spring, moving into summer. The weather is changing. So if we guide energy against the natural flow, we will create friction that will power our practice. So I encourage you at this moment to go ahead and make sure your posture is good, to begin to breathe fully and diaphragmatically. This means the belly, ribs, and chest are expanding. On the inhale, until you have inhaled to capacity, exhaling, chest, ribs, and belly will soften until you have exhaled to capacity. Go ahead and breathe in this way, putting willpower into the breath, making the breath dynamic. We don't need to necessarily at the very beginning count our breath, but in general we want the inhaled, retained, and exhaled breath about equal. So belly, ribs, and chest expand, we retain, but we retain the breath without tension in the face or eyes. As you exhale, chest, ribs, and belly will soften again in about an equal rhythm to the next inhaling breath. Belly, ribs, and chest expand. Breath is retained. Exhaling, chest, ribs, and belly are released. So maintaining this type of breath, but we're going to guide it through the nasal passages. Inhaling right, exhaling left. So inhale right, hold, exhale left. Bringing the hand into Vishnu Mudra. This is a common mudra that we use for pranayama techniques. Bringing index and middle finger down into the palm of the hand. Keep your left index finger free to tap, to count, and we'll bring the hand into position. We will exhale all the way. Check your posture one last time. Inhale right to a count of 6. Close both. Exhale left. Inhale right. Close both. Exhale left. In right. Close both. Exhale left. To a count of 9. In right, 9. Close both. Exhale left. In right. Close both. Out left. Three rounds to a count of 12. So in right, close both, out left, in right, close both, out left, final round. In right, close both, out left, Laying your hands down into neutral position. Train yourself to hold your gaze to the point between the eyebrows with the eyes relaxed but fixed to that point. And pause and wait. These are moments that I find just so interesting, because we don't know how long that space is going to be, and oftentimes ends up being longer. But when the flow begins, your job now is to simply relax, observe, and not be involved at all in what's going on. And so we observe this rhythm, this flow, but it has changed. It has changed because of what we did. So we have control through these techniques of yoga over the flow of life force through us. We can make ourselves more accessible, open our hearts wider, still our minds more completely, all through the practice of pranayama. So again, that rhythm in right, holding out left, is called Surya Beta Pranayama. If you choose to take that and practice on your own, I encourage you to go ahead and give yourself 10 minutes of using that pranayama, and you will find some amazing things beginning to occur. One of which is that the breath, your ability to breathe in, hold, and out, will continue to expand. So you might go to 15, to 18, to 21 rounds, or 24 even. And it's just a matter of giving the body a chance, time to catch up. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of warming up right where we are. Right hand beside us, inhaling, left arm up, lean into the stretch. Exhale, left hand down. Let the exhale breath complete before inhaling, right arm up. Coming into the stretch, and exhale down. So we're just flowing with the breath. And don't worry if you follow me or follow your own breath. In fact, better to follow your own breath. But do be very conscious of letting the breath be completed, both on the exhaling and on the inhaling breath as well. So you're not letting the body get in front. Beautiful. Let's lower the right arm down, and let's go ahead and bring the left hand over and the right hand behind. Lengthen the spine completely and then rotate around it. Inhaling back to center. Left arm behind, right hand over. Inhaling back to center. And again, repeating this, flowing into the twist, flowing out of the twist, exhaling into the twist, inhaling back to center, and coming back to center again. Let's go ahead at this point, extend our legs out into Upavista Konasana. And let's bring our hands to our knees, wherever they land is fine. Don't tip forward yet. In fact, we're going to make sure that we are drawing concise and clean little circles in the air. It doesn't matter which way you go as long as you note that this time you're going, in my case I am going clockwise. If I'm looking down on the crown of my head, I'm going clockwise. And as I make those circular movements larger, the circles I'm describing are bigger and bigger. If I begin to relax the spine, my spine becomes involved in a different way. Rounding forward, arching back, rounding to the right, rounding to the left, arching back to center. Now, coming back to our starting point, again, if it helps you to squeeze the pelvic floor, pull the belly button back, we can go the opposite way. So now looking down on the crown of my head, I'm going counterclockwise. Small, concise circles. But what's going on here is not only a warming up for the torso and the core, but also for the back of the legs as you begin to make those circles larger. There's a term that I do not remember. It is a anatomical, scientific sort of a term that describes one philosophy of warming the body up. And this is applied to runners, for example, or climbers. And that is that use the range of motion that you're going to be using for your activity. So rather than hoisting your leg up on a stump or something like that and bouncing around the outstretched leg, you instead use walking as the warm-up for running. So in yoga terms, this means that we can use yoga postures to warm up for other yoga postures. So here we are warming up the back of the body. We've done it a little bit, but now if we tip forward into Upavista Konasana, we're warming up using this yoga posture as a warm-up for others. Keeping the spine neutral, you can even grasp your ankles or shins, and by gripping firmly with your fingers and flexing the elbows, you can draw your body to a very definite edge. Yoga is no one practice, even though we oftentimes separate one practice from another. For example, here we are in a Hatha Yoga posture, but we use pranayama to breathe into the areas of tension, pranayama as we exhale to move deeper into the Hatha Yoga stretch. Yoga will always be carrying us from a place of duality. The ultimate duality, by the way, is that we are separate from our Creator, separate from our source. But yoga will also be moving us into Vedanta, where everything is one. All is an expression of one. Inhale as we come up. You know, when Christian missionaries went to India, they came with a view of Sankhya, which was that God is separate. God is only this one thing, and God is separate from me. And when they went to India, they saw all the different variations, all the different versions of the divine, and they misunderstood They thought that the Indians were polytheistic, and they were not. The Indians were pantheistic. They saw God everywhere. They simply had, different faces for the one divine reality. And so in our yoga practice, we were always in the place of moving from duality to non-duality, from Sankhya to Vedanta. So all of yoga will bring us things together. Let's go ahead and come on to our hands and knees. And in that spirit of using yoga as a warm-up, let's go ahead and come into this tabletop position and do cat-cows. Again, all of you know how to cat-cow, but all this will have to, on our own, work to keep the breath as our primary or lead practice and the body the secondary practice, so the body follows the breath. You may find it feels naturally good to pause in between. So you'll pause in cow with the back swayed, and you'll pause in cat with the back arched up. Good, coming back to neutral, let's simply walk back into plank pose. Please take care of your body as we go. This is one of the ways in which we practice ahimsa. Ahimsa meaning I will cause no harm. Not just killing, but causing of harm. So with our own bodies, if your wrists are a challenge for you, modify this pose. Walk your hands further forward, elevate the heels of your hands, but in some way practice Tapasya here. Tapasya is going to be an expression of willpower. And of course, this pose requires the core of our body, the navel center, the Manipur chakra, which is associated with the warrior Arjuna, and with the god Agni, fiery self-control. To stretch the back of the body, all we need to do is push the bottom of your hips straight to the ceiling until your head comes between your biceps. And we can then warm up the calf muscles by alternating left heel down, right knee bends. Slowly inhale the right heel up. Exhale, press the left heel down. And so on your own for 3 or 4 more rounds. Press. Endure the stretch. Good. Inhale, coming back into plank pose. And remember that we can continue the practice with modification, and it's in that way that we grow both stronger and more flexible. So lowering your knees to the floor may be a good practice, even before I say, let's bring the knees down. So we can stretch the back of the body, again, by coming into child's pose. So here we are using simple yoga postures as warming up, bringing the forehead to the floor, modifying if you need to. Let's give an extra stretch to our spine by wrapping our fingers around the outside of the heels, tucking your forehead into your knees. Then lift the heels, lift the buttocks off the heels until you have a dynamic stretch to your spine. This is Sasangasana, hare pose. When you're ready, release back to child's pose. And let's inhale, coming up onto our folded knees. This is Vajrasana. And how can we use this pose to stretch the front of our body? And in general, any backward bend will stretch the front side of the body, any forward bend the back. So if we turn this into a backward bend, we will come into a pose called Sapta, that means supine, Vajrasana. So our toes are crossed over and our knees are in alignment. There is another version of the pose, which is Sapta Virasana, sometimes called hero's pose, and that allows the knees to come out and splay apart a bit. But in either case, Vajrasana or Virasana, we bring the hands behind us. If you are flexible enough to do so, some of you will find that you can actually come down onto your forearms. I am not nearly warmed up enough, but you could come all the way back. So if you're going to do this, make certain that your lower back is not paying the price for your enthusiasm. You can open the throat, but please don't jackknife the neck. This may be an intense stretch. If your quadriceps are really tight, this may be a challenging pose for you. Again, separating the feet is possible, in which case your hips will be between them. That's the hero's version or Virasana version, where you might come onto your elbows. I recall my scattered forces to recharge my spine. Let's go ahead and come up. If you're going to give a deep stretch to the front of the body, let's give another deep stretch to the back. Going back into plank as a neutral pose. And down dog, again for a nice stretch to the back of the body. Good. Let's go ahead at this point, inhale, heels up, exhale, knees down. And let's take a moment, or a few moments rather, to pause. Coming into Vajrasana, remember you could pad the knees. You could put something between them to take pressure off your knees. But if your knees are good, right big toe over left, right palm in the back of the left palm, thumbs touching, and here we are in Vajrasana. This is a great time to create that visual image of the tube of light in the core of your body. These visual images and the affirmations we use are what we carry with us into our daily life. And so while in daily life you wouldn't drop down in the midst of your activity onto the floor in all likelihood and do the physical posture, you could take an internal pause. And in the midst of most other activities, you could find a tube of light and just run your way up and down through that tube of light from the pelvic floor, behind the navel, through the heart, to the point between the eyebrows. Just go up and down a few times slowly with awareness, and you will become centered. And whenever we do this, the affirmation, whether we say it in words or not, the affirmation is made manifest. We realize it, that in stillness, that's where I really touch my inner strength. In stillness, I touch my inner strength. So having warmed up in this way here on the floor, let's go ahead and make our way up to standing. Having a chair available or a wall available is one way of making sure that you're practicing tapasya for poses that are challenging for you. You're practicing tapasya appropriately. What I mean, I'll show you in just a few minutes, is when it comes to really big balance poses, Natarajasana, dancing Shiva pose, for example. That's a big balance pose. And it's beautiful, but on the other hand, most people can't do it in its entirety. So having a chair nearby allows us to have the energy benefits of the pose, but also to not fall over, which ends everything. So coming to Tadasana, spreading toes wide. Let's go ahead and keep the weight to the front of the feet, and let's bring our hands to our hearts. Let's really do a little bit of quick pranayama, double breathing, body tensed, double breath out, palms touching. Double breath in, double breath out. Double breath in, double breath out. One more time. Tense with willpower, vibrate, and then double breath out. Relax. Let's go ahead and follow some of the same patterns of movement that we warmed up with. For example, let's come into Ardha Chandrasana, tucking tailbone under, pulling navel back, keeping everything in alignment, interlocking thumbs above you, coming onto the balls of the feet. You might even want to challenge yourself, bring the feet closer together. And as you exhale, move hips left, shoulders right, and lengthen the right side of the body. You can rest your head on your right upper arm and turn your gaze up and to the left. Find areas of resistance, breathe into them. So here in the midst of this yoga posture, pranayama is still practiced. And we go deeper into the truth of what's happening, that we are combining the forces of the navel center and the heart. And that's what we affirm: strength and courage fill my body cells. Strength and courage fill my body cells. Inhaling, coming back up. Again, do the balls of the feet. Exhale, arms down, and back to Tadasana. Pausing to turn your attention inside, and that practice of contentment, santosha, is this matter of whatever you find in a pose, after pose, that you are contented with it. Contentment is a dynamic practice. It is not a bovine quality. It's not about ruminating out in the fields. Contentment is an active practice of accepting the truth of what is and being contented with that truth. Let's come to the other side, coming all the way up. Exhaling, hips right, shoulders left. So here we are in half moon pose. Strength and courage fill my body cells. Strength and courage fill my body cells. Strength and courage fill my body cells. Good. Inhaling all the way back up. Exhaling, arms down. And if you want to step the feet wider apart again, this would be the moment to do it. Then turn your attention inward. Can you find a tube of light right now? And can you not only find that tube of light, but slow yourself down? So you're aware of going from root chakra to navel center to heart to spiritual eye, just along this pathway. Now, I just left out a couple centers. It's only to say that in the moments of our activity, that it may be enough to simply find that central pathway and return to it with your awareness. Again, from Tadasana, we'll come into chair pose, Utkatasana. So again, we come to the balls of the feet. So I have this chair here, and Utkatasana can be a challenging pose. We inhale, retain the breath, and settle down here. So I want my legs to have a chance to really do the work of holding my body up, not by getting tenser, but by staying spring-like. So balance is an issue, and strength is also part of the equation. So having a chair here, lightly touching it, is just enough to make this pose easy enough for me to hold a little bit longer. If no chair is necessary and your arms are extended, that's great. But don't let tension become the substitute for tapasya. Tension will lock energy in a way that is no longer usable. Tension in the muscles becomes a substitute for, becomes an addition to the bones in your body. Stable, yes, but not nearly as flexible. So keep flexibility here. My body is no burden. It is light as air. My body is no burden. It is light as air. So inhale, hands down, sweep up, lower arms down, and I invite you to immediately turn your attention inward. Here we are in the midst of our practice, pausing to come inward. And we get better and better at doing this so that it's easier and easier for us in the midst of activity to stay centered, contented, and calm. Let's go ahead at this point, and I'm thinking we'll do it like this. Spread our feet wide apart. Prasarita Padottanasana. We'll come down, we'll do a little bit of gliding side to side. And then we'll come into Warrior Two. And then we'll go ahead and begin to rotate and turn one side or the other, and we'll see what comes up. So with wide-legged stance, hands to the hip sockets or hip joints, you can go ahead and come into a 90-degree fold. So hips are traveling backward through space. You know, there are certain yoga terms that are just, they come up a lot. And very seldom does a Sanskrit word have a single definition in English. Sukha and dukkha. Sukha is easeful, happy. Dukkha is unhappy or suffering. In the Yoga Sutras, it describes the alternating patterns of, oh, I love this and I don't love this. I'm happy here, I'm not happy there. That is called Sukha Dukkha Dham. Sukha Dukkha Dham. It's a lovely, it has a little rhythm to it. So in Hatha Yoga, when our body is free to move through space, that is Sukha. And so it is freedom, it is expansion, and it feels good, it's happy. So as you let your hips travel backward, the spine is relatively neutral. And yet we also have the need to pay attention, belly lifting towards the backbone, securing the lumbar, or the lumbar spine. and possibly staying here rather than going any further down if that's better for your body. If you are going to come down, you can slide the hands down to the ankles. And as we did earlier, feel free to grasp with your fingers, and using your elbows to flex, you can come a little deeper into the stretch. I relax and cast aside all mental burdens. I relax and cast aside all mental burdens. That word cast aside is important. It is dynamic. It's like there is that active quality of picking something up and casting or throwing it away from you. Now bring your hands to the floor, either fingers forward or back, up to you. I'm going to go forward. You could rotate toes outward to an angle and come into a very deep stretch. So this is gorilla pose, and again we can glide side to side. How far you go? Up to you. If you want to play with your body a little bit, see how far is comfortable. Maybe you straighten out the right knee completely as you lunge to the left. Inhaling back to center, exhaling to the other side. Maybe your hands even move with you. But keep your feet flat to the floor. Don't let the foot peel off. So on your own, moving slowly, really explore these lateral lunges. And next time you come back to center, you can turn your feet back to center, place your hands on your knees, come back up, and walk your feet back and together. So, this is a great moment. So as you relax, shoulders down, put your attention to the point between the eyebrows, it's a great moment because what we're doing is going to increase to a large degree the amount of energy flowing through us. And with these bigger physical movements and with the use of tapasya, really the tapasya leads to freedom, patient endurance. There's a wonderful chant about Saint Teresa of Avila. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you. All things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. And that's what it feels like when we have this abundance of energy. What else do I need? And the answer is nothing. I'm in the eternal now. So let's go ahead and come into Warrior 2. So Warrior 2 begins with legs spread wide. Let's turn our right foot out, lunge to the right knee, and if need be, walk that right foot further away. But before we begin the pose proper, we're going to turn our torso forward, tuck our tailbone under, and make sure that we are relatively aligned so that when we bring our arms up, our arms are directly above knee and ankle on both sides of our body. And our upper body is relatively relaxed. Let's rotate palms up. Exhale, turn to the right. All of you know this pose, so set up a pattern of energy. An easy pattern of energy is from the left hand as you inhale into the heart, and as you exhale from the heart off of the right hand. Sort of a bigger, more powerful flow of energy is from the earth through the left leg up to the spine and into the heart, and then exhaling into the right hand. So play with these different patterns of energy. And what we're doing to actively choose a pathway for energy to flow, to visualize light flowing through that pathway, to increase the volume of light using willpower. But to do all this with a level of ease and relaxation. That's why we practice yoga, because these things are challenging. But in the end, what our goal is union, yoga. I open to this flow of God's life within me. I open to this flow of God's life within me. Inhale the right knee straight. Exhale, arms down. Feet walking, turning back to center. Pause. If you wanted to come back to Tadasana, you could, but pausing here is fine as long as your foundation is stable. Inner thighs are active. By active, I mean that I am imagining I have a big ball between my thighs and I'm going to tense my thigh muscles, inner thighs, to hold them in place. I joyfully manifest the power of God. In stillness, I touch my inner strength. I stand ready to obey thy least command. Rotating the left foot out. Making sure your right foot is perpendicular to the left. Torso again is facing straight forward. Left knee is lunging. And the spine is neutral. It is almost as if you are hung from the ceiling by the crown of your head. So your spine is long, your spine is lengthened and neutral. And so that when you bring your arms up, there's a sense of lightness. Rotating palms up, exhaling to the left, and so begins Warrior Two on this side. I joyfully manifest the power of God. Don't be satisfied with the physical posture. Don't be satisfied with remembering the affirmation. Turn the posture and the affirmation into a direct experience. And as you use the affirmation and have this direct experience, the affirmation will be transformed into a prayer. When we are living in the eternal now, we're able to pray intimately because we are not far from our source. Our Creator is with us, and it is a joyful event in which we are engaged. I joyfully manifest the power of God. Good, let's inhale the left knee straight. Feet forward. We're going to walk our feet together. And in Tadasana, recenter, regroup. Find that core pathway. But also don't let the actual practice of of choosing to be aware of the presence of the divine in every cell of your body. This is the essence of Vedanta. Vedanta, we tend to live in a world of duality, of Sankhya. We tend to think of things as being different and separate. The ultimate of Sankhya is God is not where I am, and I have to somehow do something, say something, or go somewhere to find God. I have to die and go to heaven. In Vedanta, we say, God is present with me. I cannot move away from her or from him. The only thing I need is to increase my awareness. I stand ready with my heart wide open to receive your divine guidance in my life. You know, I was planning to do Nadarajasana, but I think as I look at the time, I want to make sure we get some more dynamic practice on the mat as well. So keep your chair handy if you use one for an inversion. It will come in handy for that. But let's go ahead and make sure that we have blocks nearby, if you're going to use blocks at any point. I'm not sure exactly how they'll come in, but they often do. You want to come to the end of your mat. You know, I normally or often will have mats creating a cross. I learned that as being Bangalore style, I don't know why. But in any case, having two mats gives us the freedom to just go in either direction and have a mat there for us. And on your own, you could set up that way. I don't do it mainly because I'm teaching to the camera, and so it works better to just go ahead and go to profile here. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of Durga Pranayama. So we'll inhale, coming up. Exhale, down. I invite you to follow your own rhythm, but to let the breath lead the way, let the body follow, and as soon as you feel the inclination to come into Padahastasana, rocking your weight forward to the balls of the feet, even in the simple forward fold, can lead to a very dynamic shift in the back of the body, in the hips, hamstrings, back of the knees, even the calf muscles. And so holding this pose a little longer is a practice of tapasya. And the result of tapasya is always going to be sukha, space, good space. In this case, physically, it is the space that is liberated, but internally it's the space we move into. Nothing on earth can hold me. Therefore, I can relax completely. Now, putting your hands on either side of your feet and stepping the left foot back will bring you into a runner's lunge. When we string yoga postures together and move from one to the other, we call it vinyasa. Some yoga practices, beautiful traditions, are built upon vinyasa. In Ananda Yoga, we typically are not using vinyasa other than when we are engaged in sun salutations. But again, sometimes we can come back here, hold it, exhale, forward. Inhale up, exhale and pause. So little vinyasa builds the energy and moves it all into an inward and upward pattern, the goal of yoga. Our yoga practice, whether it's meditation, chanting, affirmation, pranayama, yoga postures, will all have a common impact. It will move the energy that flows through us inward and upward. Good, let's inhale, arms up. Exhale, Padahastasana. Inhale, right foot back into this runner's lunge. If you feel to rock forward and back to lengthen the hip flexors, a great idea. Good, let's inhale, stepping the left foot back. So here we are in plank pose. Again, if Tapasya is going to be one of the key components of your practice, it means you're going to perhaps challenge yourself in many different ways. Holding poses longer, but in order to avoid ahimsa, or in order to avoid, or in order to practice ahimsa, or in order to avoid stealing something that isn't yours, that's asteya, we will sometimes modify a pose so that what is rightfully ours is indeed ours. So lowering the knees down but holding plank pose longer may be the solution. Let's go ahead and exhale from here to down dog. Calmness radiates from every fiber of my being. If you are very flexible, if your body is very flexible, you'll find that your heels may go all the way to the floor. But if you walk your feet back, really get your hips as high as they'll go, you'll find that you can find a space where you have room to stretch even deeper. Good, let's inhale, heels up. Exhale, knees down, Vajrasana, and pause. It may not be necessary, or you may want to vary your practice so that rather than always coming back to that tube, you can learn to put your attention right to the spiritual eye. When we have enough willpower, we can magnetize the energy inward and upward. Having enough willpower oftentimes ends up being misunderstood. It is oftentimes expressed physically as tension. Magnetism is something different. It's a willingness and the power to increase that willingness for something to occur. Attention right here. In stillness, I touch my inner strength. When we take that affirmation and put our attention here, with single-pointed focus, then it's almost like we have gone through the smallest part of an hourglass and emerged into a new space that is even larger and greater and infinite than the outer world around us. But we slipped into that inner dimension. In stillness, I touch my inner strength. So from this position, let's go ahead and come back to plank to down dog, and then we'll come into Rajakapotasana, pigeon pose. So coming here, plank, and if strength is your goal, by the way, you could always take a moment to pause, lower yourself down so your heart and chin touch, but not your belly button. If you can't go down all the way, you go down part way. If you need modification, you could bring your knees down, do the same thing there. But it's not about pumping out push-ups. It's about staying in the present moment while being challenged. Down dog, exhale. Let's begin with the left leg first. So we'll inhale, extend the left leg up. Exhale, knee and nose together. Inhale, extend. Exhale, knee and nose together. From this extension, we'll bring the left leg beneath us into pigeon pose. We'll walk our left leg back. Walk our right leg back to really bring everything right to that edge. So this is a great example of Tapasya on our mat. Can I lengthen the spine, open the heart, and really create a dynamic area of resistance in my left hip? Can I engage that resistance to my benefit? I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now. Turning toes under, inhaling plank. Your choice, plank pose, or you could come into Vajrasana. Plank pose is obviously going to be more of a challenge, and that's where you have to choose. Is it right for me to challenge myself by holding this for a bit longer and gaining benefit in that way from it? Let's go ahead and come back to down dog. This time extending the right leg back, curling the right knee in. And then placing, not throwing, but placing the right leg beneath us, drawing the left leg and hip back. So here we are in this dynamic stretch here. I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now. Coming all the way down on your forearms, maybe all the way down with your forehead to the floor. We're going to return now to plank. And we'll exhale and come all the way down. Point toes back. Pressing your hips and thighs into the floor firmly. Lift your heart up. Now we can keep the elbows close to the ribs. Arms close into the body. Fingers spread wide. So this is one version of Cobra. So it's not quite as easy as Sphinx pose with the elbows beneath the shoulders. Rather, the elbows are back, but you have the entire forearm, elbow to fingertips, that pull back and sweep the heart up. I rise joyfully to meet each new opportunity. Think of being a turtle trying to get your head completely out of your shell. Exhale down. Bring hands back to heart level. Turn toes under. Using your knees if needed, but we're going to push back up into plank. And from plank to down dog. Now, if you come back into plank pose now, we'll come into Vashisthasana. And so, modifying is easy in this pose. I find the most facile modified version is to lower the left knee down and to roll onto the outside of the left leg while the right arm is above. Now, if you're not using the knee down, the legs can be one in front of the other, the feet one in front of the other. But if this is too much, you can always lower that knee down. Let's come back to plank pose. Exhale, down dog. Inhale, plank. Exhale, Vashisthasana, side plank pose to the opposite side. Exhaling, plank pose. Inhaling, exhaling, down dog. Good, let's inhale, lifting the heels up. Exhale, knees down. And so here's a time, if you're going to use a folding chair, which I just love a shoulder stand with a chair. It just is so easeful. And bring your blankets into position. Remember, your blankets are folded, so the folded edge is offset from the top blanket to the bottom blanket. And so they serve as a cushion for your cervical spine, your neck. So if you are going to do a complete shoulder stand, you're welcome to do it now, again, and making sure it's safe. One of the no-nos in inversions is turning the head. So even though I don't have a lot of weight on my neck, or almost none, I still am disciplining myself to look straight up, not towards the camera, or not towards the altar. Let's go ahead and hold this inversion a few breaths longer. As you focus to the spiritual eye with the body inverted, there is a strong inclination for the energy to move towards the throat and spiritual eye. Oh. A beautiful affirmation here. Divine peace now floods my being. Divine peace now floods my being. When you're ready to exit, you can go ahead and release the hands from the chair. Slowly reapply the spine to the floor. And just push that out of the way. Move your blankets out of the way. And we'll extend arms out to the side. And we'll do a simple twist here, as opposed to Jatara Parivartanasana. So if you wanted to, you could just slide your hips to the right and lower your legs to the left, but not try to cross one leg over the other. If any of you want to go ahead and do the full pose, you're welcome to. But I just want to leave time for us to have a few minutes of meditation at the end. So inhale back up to center. Exhale, hips to the left, knees to the right. Oh. I hope that feels as good to you as it does to me. So I'm just shifting my hips a little bit. My knees go to the left. I've shifted my hips to the right. Bring knees back. Shift hips to the left. Lower knees to the right. Good. And then let's go ahead and come back to center. Apanasana. And go ahead and arrange your body comfortably for Shavasana. So go ahead and cover yourself up if you like. Put a eye pillow on your head if you like. Support the back of your knees if that's helpful to you. Take a double breath in and tense the whole body. Double breath out. Double breath in and tense. Double breath out. Tense. The affirmation for Shavasana, I find it best for me if I whisper it in my mind, speaking to the breath, or speaking to the body, speaking to the mind, speaking to the emotions, bones, muscles, movement. There's the body. I surrender now. I surrender all those things. Anxiety, elation, depression. There's the mind. Or I'm sorry, anxiety, depression, that's all. Elation, depression, that's the feeling. Churning thoughts, there's mind. All these I give into the hands of peace. So bones, muscles, movement, I surrender now. Anxiety, elation, depression, churning thoughts, all these I give into the hands of peace. The secret at this moment is to transition slowly and carefully, keeping within your consciousness those qualities that we've worked with, the qualities of calmness, qualities of peace. And so that quality of calmness and peace that is within you as a natural result of Shavasana, if you extend both arms along the floor beside your head, pull your knees into your chest and roll over to your right side. Pause there, now with your top arm sort of in front of your chest, your right arm beneath your head. And it's those arms rather than your back and torso. They're going to do the job of pushing you up and arranging your body in a comfortable seated position. Just as soon as you have come up and your body is arranged comfortably, turn your attention right back to the breath, where you're practicing pranayama in the form of not controlling the breath. Pranayama in this case is observing, witnessing, but not manipulating or influencing. And the easy way to observe the breath is by holding your attention fixed to the end of the nasal passages. And whenever the breath begins to rise, and it will feel cool as it goes in and up, let your mind draw out the sound of the syllable hong, H-O-N-G. And on the exhale breath, as the breath is leaving through the nasal passages, warm and moving down and outward, draw out the sound of the syllable saw, S-A-U. You may find that with one of your hands, palm up, that as the inhale breath enters your body, you can gently curl the index finger of one hand towards the palm, and as the exhaling breath is leaving, the right index finger, mirroring the exhale breath, is relaxing into an open palmed position. So the breath is there as your primary focus. Your mind is following the breath, cool, rising, warm, receding. The index finger is mirroring that movement. And the breath is creating the sound in your mind on the inhaling breath of hong, H-O-N-G, on the exhaling breath, saw. And you'll begin to settle for longer and longer spans of time into the exhale breath space, where everything is paused. Palm is upturned and open, gaze is held at the spiritual eye, the cycle of the breath and the mantra is finished, and you are paused, lingering in this place, which is infinitely expandable. Now on your next inhale breath, we'll end the mantra and we'll exhale through the mouth with 3 short puffs. And now we settle for a couple of minutes into simply stillness. No techniques, no control, gaze held fixed but relaxed as a spiritual eye. As you remain inwardly focused, I invite you to affirm 3 times with me, and as you repeat each consecutive time, you do so with a greater level of willpower, but no outward tension, not even an outward voice. It's almost as if you're speaking with the voice of your heart. Through life's mightiest storms, I am contented, for I hold in my heart God's peace. Through life's mightiest storms, I am contented, for I hold in my heart God's peace. Through life's mightiest storms, I am contented, for I hold in my heart God's peace. And we'll end our practice with this prayer. Divine Mother, as you live eternally at rest in yourself, so let me also live contented ever, that I may be worthy of living in your joy. Sealing our practice and sending out the blessings of our practice to the world. Rub your hands together energetically. We'll chant Om 3 times and send our practice out as a blessing to all. Om. 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 Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.